either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome, darling, to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm one of your hosts, Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
Darling.
Darling.
There are so many darlings in this movie.
Oh, I love it.
So today we are very excited. We are doing a relatively classic movie.
Oh, yeah.
Actually one of the most iconic movies of America, at least its poster is.
Oh, yes.
And fashion-wise.
And then also this movie solidified Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah. Today we are doing 1961's Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Which I have seen so many times, and I have loved. But now, watching it again with a critical eye, I have more questions than I did the first handful of times I watched it.
Okay. My history with this is I was going through a spurt of classic starlets.
Yes. It was so much fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. I started with some Marilyn Monroe and then quickly went down a rabbit hole of Audrey Hepburn.
I feel like you're either in one camp or the other.
Oh, yeah. I'm very much an Audrey Hepburn kind of guy. But, yeah, so that's how I started going into this one. And this is one that I had heard about, like, growing up, but also that my parents had watched it and that they were underwhelmed by it. Because,
sure.
Yeah, this movie came out the same year my dad was born, so, like, by the time
it already hit classic status
10,
for them.
15, maybe 20 years before they got to see it.
Yeah.
So, like, there was time for it to mature, and then there was all the hype of, like, oh, you should have seen this back in the day kind of thing.
Yes. And I think this is a very good example of, like, the circle effect that movies have.
Mm-hmm.
Especially movies that early on get labeled, like, a classic film. Or, like, a pinnacle child.
Yeah.
Because this, very early on, a lot of people saw it and went, this is it. This is the peak of 20th century.
Yeah.
And then people came back to it 10, 20 years later and went, this has problems.
Yeah.
A lot of problems. And also, I didn't think it was that good. But now, all these years later, most people have come back around to being like, was there problems? Yes. Was this still a pinnacle movie of the 20th century?
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, yes.
Yeah. And, I mean, there was for me, it kind of, that circle kind of reminds me of a couple years ago when The Irishman came out.
Yes.
Everyone's like, oh, this is an immediate classic. And I watch it, I'm like, this is, like, it's not a bad movie, but it's not great. Like, it's just kind of, it's the end of something that should have died a long time ago.
And I think for most of us who are into dumb fantasy movies,
mm-hmm.
we are very familiar with this cycle. It happens much faster.
Yeah.
In dumb fantasy world. But for classical world, especially comedies and romance films, which this is both, that cycle is very slow.
Mm-hmm.
Decades long slow.
Yeah.
And some of them never really cycle. They just kind of plateau at the, oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
Sort of stage. This one fully cycled back around.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a lot going into it. I mean, it's Audrey Hepburn, it's classic. Everyone knows the name, they know Tiffany's.
And who hasn't seen the imagery for this? Even if you haven't watched the film, you know the look of, like, even if you didn't realize this was from a movie, when you picture Audrey Hepburn, you don't think of her in a lot of her modeling clothes. Mm-hmm. You picture her from this movie.
Depends on how much of her filmography you've been through.
Very true. And I think, especially, I was probably like 5-10 years ago, there was this big wave in the Monroe and Hepburn, like, not really revival, but like, as an aesthetic,
mm-hmm.
they, for some reason, had a kind of a cult following. Like, I remember people in college fully decorating their apartments, and one of the, like, roommates would be the Hepburn side, and the other person would be the Monroe side, and together we have Breakfast at Tiffany's style. There was a lot of black and white and pictures of Paris.
Yeah, very, very. Actually, now that you're here, I got a thought. That is about the time frame of the term basic bitch coming into vogue.
And not just in like the, wow, don't call me that, but in like I'm going to own how my entire apartment is knockoff Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah, slash...
From Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, and about that same time, Live, Laugh, Love, that whole...
That was the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
You were either on the black and white Paris side, or you were on the country chic side.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a weird...
A weird time in interior decoration.
Oh, God. It was a very follow the trends kind of.
Yes.
And I mean, that still happens. I mean, I got a cousin who my mom was telling me they're going with Barnhouse chic and...
Yeah, I mean, and, like, that's what trends are for, but it does really, like, prove how deep this movie has gone, because I guarantee you, none of the people who, in my college, who were decorating their dorms and apartments like that, have seen Breakfast at Tiffany's.
No.
Like, maybe one of them has, and once they get done decorating, they did bother to, like, watch, like, 2 films, but neither of them are, like, deep Audrey Hepburn fans or deep Monroe fans.
Yeah.
They might like the story of them, they might like the imagery of them, but, like, how many years later in this movie still influencing teenage girls to decorate their rooms?
The iconography.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get too far into that, because I do have some thoughts about that towards the end, and there is some discussion about the influence of that. For those who don't know, as we've mentioned, Breakfast at Tiffany's is a 1961 romance comedy that is based on the novel of the same name by, novella by Truman Capote, whom most of us will know from the true crime world for writing In Cold Blood.
Yes.
Granted, I have never actually read one of his stories, so...
Okay, I'm familiar with In Cold Blood, and for this I did read most of or at least the parts that I knew were drastically different.
Okay.
This.
I did none of that. I went into this not really blind, rewatching it, and also just knowing it was based off Truman Capote, who Philip Seymour Hoffman played in a movie that I want to get to at some point. That's my knowledge of Capote.
And honestly, I think most people, that's how, when this film came out, that's how they saw this. The book wasn't like an underground, undiscovered book when this came out. Yeah. It was something that, like, maybe your high school teacher makes you read, or like, oh, the book club has recommended it, but not like book clubs like nowadays where everyone reads the exact same book. This is pre Da Vinci Code book club.
I never was part of a book club, so
I am never part of it, but I am always the person who has to clean the house for the book club.
Oh, okay.
And then leave the book club party.
All right.
This is what happens when you have a family member in book club.
Oh,
is you prep for book club. You also read the book for book club, and you do not participate in book club.
So it's like husband watches, where you casually are hearing the show or the book in the background.
Yes, that's exactly what it was like. And so, like, some people did go in this knowing the book, and I think those who did were not upset with the changes, because the book, much like Hunchback of Notre Dame, while a classic, not exactly a happy romance vibe. Yeah,
from what I remember, the book is more of a cautionary tale.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this one plays much more into the time period and who it was for, which is much more of a fun flirt.
And so also the novella was adapted for the screen by George Axelrod. Axelrod is also known for a few other classics, such as The 7-Year Itch, 1962's Manchurian Candidate, and another Hepburn movie, Paris When It Sizzles.
Yes, which is also very good if you haven't seen it.
It is very good.
It is very good.
Like I said, there's probably like maybe 2 or 3 of Hepburn's movies I haven't seen. So.
I completely understand.
Yeah. As well, it was directed by Blake Edwards, who is probably better well known for his writing and directing of the Pink Panther movies of the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're classic and they're so funny.
Oh, yeah. As well, Edwards was not the original director.
No.
John Frankenheimer originally was set to direct, and he did about 3 months before Hepburn's agent requested they have a more well-known director.
Which is hilarious because she wasn't the original pick for this role.
No, she wasn't. But at the same time, I kind of understand like that level of stardom, because Frankenheimer was at this point had only directed television in one movie called The Young Savages.
Yeah.
But he would later go on to direct movies such as The Manchurian Candidate, Seconds, which I got with the Criterion sale a couple sales ago. Pretty solid science fiction movie.
Nice.
Black Sunday.
Of course.
Ronin. And Reindeer Games.
Oh, sure.
And would later go on in his career to direct The Island of Dr. Moreau after Richard Stanley was fired.
There we go. That's where we know him from.
That's where a lot of us will know him from.
Yes, there he is.
Yeah.
And while I do think it is funny that he was replaced for someone more famous because they replaced the famous person with someone at the time slightly less famous.
Yes.
I unfortunately do think it was a good choice in the end because this film really had some tiptoeing to do. Because when this came out, we are still really hard in the whole be polite on movie era.
Kind of. I'll get into that in a little bit at a specific part. There are some tiptoeing around they do, but on other parts they
were blatant in some spots.
Very blatant and
there was some clever ways that because they switched directors and because of who was starring in it, they were able to do some of this.
Yeah. And so on top of Audrey Hepburn, it does star George Peppard. Which at that point, I don't think I mean Audrey Hepburn doesn't need any introduction.
No, of course not.
As for Peppard, he's been in a fair amount, but he's one I'm not super familiar with. And from my readings, apparently he was a pain in the ass to work with.
Yeah.
Especially after this movie and beyond, and so his career kind of fizzled out.
Yeah, it sounded to me, and again, I'm not super familiar with him either, but it sounded like he spent a lot of time being the socialite from this movie.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it didn't lead to a long career.
Oh, yeah. And before we really get into it, I do want to note my sources. Mainly comes from the DVD commentary and special features, which I think I have the 2006 release.
Okay.
I don't have like the super fancy one, so there's some stuff I pulled from IMDb's trivia and Wikipedia, general resources.
I would say every release of this has a new set of commentary,
and
most of them you can find on YouTube.
Yeah, and I mean they add some fun in betweens, but it's not like some super in-depth one that's going to break down every single moment.
No, there's a lot more of like fun facts, like how many cats played cat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that sort of stuff.
Exactly. And also before we get into it, what are we drinking today, Chris?
Well, we failed. We should have put water in this.
Oh, yeah.
We have bourbon on the rocks, but without water because we're classy.
Yeah, well, and also I'm an idiot because I just got back from Kentucky. And
you
did not in flight on my way home. I'm like, I should have just got straight bourbon Kentucky bourbon while I was there.
But alas, next time.
Nope. Prost.
Delicious.
I feel like they would. I should have looked up what they say in French to toast because there's so much French in this movie too.
There is a lot of French in this movie, and I don't know, that somehow managed to just kind of be Audrey Hepburn's image.
Yeah,
in a way, with small black dress, long cigarette, and France. Even though France is not actually in this film. Yeah,
it makes me think of like that. I mean, they do mention why she started learning French, but it makes me think of like. Those girls in high school who are like, oh, that's très chic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Very cute.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Ah, a lovely movie.
We open up on New York City at Tiffany's & Company on, I believe, 5th Avenue.
This is the flagship store.
Mm-hmm. As a well-dressed woman exits a car and has breakfast at Tiffany's.
It is. Which, in case you're wondering, yes, you can actually have breakfast at this Tiffany's.
Can you?
Yes. In 2017, a bistro or a cafe was added to this specific Breakfast in Tiffany's, and this Tiffany & Company on 5th Avenue. And you can, in fact, order breakfast.
Fascinating.
Which is also hilarious because Audrey Hepburn doesn't like breakfast or pastries.
Well, no, it was specifically the type of roll she was eating.
Yeah, she wasn't a fan.
I think it was like a Danish roll or something.
She was kind of well known for being kind of a picky eater.
Mm-hmm.
Probably crazy picky, but like not compared to some stars who only eat red jelly beans or whatever.
Yeah, not like the My Strange Addiction cheese and potatoes woman.
I understand that woman deeply.
But only cheese and potatoes?
Think of how many different cheese and potato combinations there could be. But also, I eat the same thing for breakfast, and I have for the last 8 years of my life.
You do also eat peas in a bowl with your hands. I
yes.
constantly forget your
my spirit animal
goblin eating habits.
My spirit animal is a raccoon, too fat to get into the garbage can.
Okay.
Audrey Hepburn's is not, because she doesn't super care for pastries.
No.
And this one was meant to look poofy, elegant, French, Danish style.
Yeah.
Which was not her taste. And they had to take some sources say they had to do this take a couple times because people kept crowding, wanting to see her. It was busy. But someone else came out and said, no, it went so smoothly because there was somehow no traffic.
Well, okay. So there were a couple things with that. One, there was good crowd control by the police.
I mean, you have to. It's Audrey Hepburn. And by this point, she's not unknown. We all know who Audrey Hepburn is.
But they were also shooting the shots at 5 a.m. on a Sunday.
That helps. That helps.
Exactly.
If they really want to do it, you got to do it. You got to figure out when Catholic Mass is, and that's when you shoot. There's nobody out. They're all at church.
Maybe back then.
Probably back then.
Yeah. But as we do get the credits rolling and the theme plays.
I love opening credits. They're so nostalgic.
These ones are very nice because so we're watching this after watching a handful of movies that start off in New York.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very different New York opening than what we see now because we start at street level. It feels at the same time, it feels kind of bizarre because it is quiet. There's not really it feels almost like there's no activity, like it's a dead. But also there's not those B-roll shots of the ducks in the park, the snow falling.
No giant overview shot of New York City from a helicopter. And to be honest, this is the New York shots that most people desire. Is this comprehension of New York? Because it is undoubtedly New York, but it is not overly classy, and it's also not like overly Christmassy, which unfortunately, New York has become. It's
also not like Vampire's Kiss, the dirty kind of underworld 90s New York.
But it is at the same time.
Yeah.
Because all of the parts of New York that Tiffany's is the only nice place she goes to.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere else you could argue is like, middle of the road. Her apartment's not in a good part of town.
No. It's just kind of, well, actually, a good time, because I was kind of talking with one of our designers today about just like the idea of place, and like we can still pick this out as like this is New York.
Yeah, you have no doubt in your mind it's New York.
But like how we talk about how we were talking about like the suburbs, and he had a professor who showed him this street, and it's like, where's this? Oh, that's by the trees. It's got to be Florida. He's like, no, this is Michigan.
Yeah, because
in America we have all that, especially the suburbs. Everything
looks the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like but for her it's everyday. It's an everyday thing. It's just the city where like it's kind of like how we look at Paris and it's like, oh, the architecture, it's so French, it's beautiful.
But then when you go there, people are like, no, this is my house.
Yeah, it's just it's an everyday thing to them, and that's one of the good things they do with this movie is making it feel like it's just an everyday place,
which is really well balanced because part of the whole theme of this movie is our main character wanting the lavish New York lifestyle. Mm-hmm. But they don't go into stupid Home Alone stuck in New York City too.
Yeah.
With how like extravagant New York City is. No, it's just New York City. She just wanted to be in New York City.
Yeah.
Would she like to live at Tiffany's? Of course. But she doesn't.
It kind of makes me think of my family friend's daughter Emma, who moved to New York for the exact same reason. Also co-hosts a podcast, The Transcontinental Tea.
Nice.
So check them out. Dating advice and just beauty and stuff.
Yeah.
Good travel stuff too. So
fun.
Yeah. But as she transitioned to New York, this woman also starts to walk home as a man confronts her, and she buzzes a neighbor who is obviously who wakes up. He's obviously done this many times before, but he's annoyed.
He is very annoyed.
I do want to get into this in just a second.
Okay. I will hold my tongue.
We want to address this from the get-go, but there are a couple things I want to talk about in these establishing shots. It's also revealed that she's a bit of a scatterbrain.
A little bit.
And she seems to be a bit of a user, or it's hinted at that she has a sketchy occupation.
Yeah.
This is where we start talking about them tiptoeing around.
They do this so delightfully.
Yes, especially for a movie from the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also the typical man of the era who deserves some rights, which, knowing what's to come, she's probably swindled him. And
for sure. 100%.
Yeah, there's some stuff to that, which we'll get to.
We'll get to all that.
And this is there's also this little bit of a flirtatious relationship with the very, very politically, or not political, I hate the term politically incorrect, socially unsensible upstairs neighbor, Mr. Yoshida, who is portrayed by the comedic actor Mickey Rooney, who apparently was only there for like 2 days of shooting.
He got a lot of shots done in 2 days, dang.
He's only there for like 4 shots in the movie, honestly.
Yeah, but and I guess you're right. It is kind of odd, though, because for a purely slapstick character in this movie, unlike the book where he does play a larger role, in the movie he's just a slapstick character to, like, let her in her own building. Yeah,
and threaten to call the police.
Yeah,
and various government bodies.
Yeah, which, I mean, like, we could have had anybody do.
Yeah.
He somehow reappears at just enough times throughout this movie that you're like, oh yeah, you're still here. Yeah. Like, it's not like a one and done scene, unfortunately.
No, and I think especially nowadays with the social climate, and even back then it was still very jarring, but this is the biggest issue of the movie, is that there's a white man playing a Japanese character, and he's not really even playing a character, he's playing a caricature.
Yeah, and from the get-go, the only people who seemed to really think this was a good idea was Rudy, who thought it was a joke. He thought this was a comedy. Yeah. Which, it is. It is a comedy, but it's one of those things where, like, did he really understand, like, what jokes he was punching? I don't think so. No. And then the director, who at the same time didn't realize what jokes he was throwing. Yeah. They have since come out and said all of them have regretted. Even Rooney, who went back and forth, and whether or not you accept his apology is completely up to you. Yeah. But
and I'll get into that a bit, because there are some things I do want to put forward, and not saying that the portrayal is agreeable because it's atrocious, but when we examine older movies, you do have to look back at what the world and the country was like at these times, and we have the privilege of hindsight to frame these ideologies of the time. So to give a bit of perspective, at this point we were 6 years into the Vietnam War. We are also at the cusp of many civil rights movements and organizations, which I won't go fully into because there's a lot of that, including the Asian civil rights movement, which is heavily overlooked. But also, at this time in America, racist humor was more widely accepted.
Like, to the point where if you dig hard enough, it's in Disney cartoons. Yeah,
and so even at this time, the producer Shepard wanted to recast the role, not because he thought Rooney wasn't a good actor for it, or did the job injustice. He just thought it could have been portrayed by someone of Japanese ethnicity, but
he didn't have to put a teeth thing in his mouth.
Yeah, he went through a lot of prosthetics to look very stereotypical of World War II propaganda. Yes,
Asian and I think that was where most people's problem came from.
Yeah, and at the time, it was the decision of Blake Edwards to make the choice, and so he went with it. Which later Blake Edwards stated in the 45th anniversary that, quote unquote, looking back, I wish I'd redone it. Mm-hmm. And I would give anything to be able to recast, but it's there, and onward and upward.
It should be a learning opportunity for everyone, because despite this really atrocious character, who unfortunately does continuously appear in the movie, the rest of the movie, with the exception of one character who I will get to vehemently, is very well done.
Yeah. And, as you said, Rooney's apologized, but he's even mentioned that he's been around the world and no one's given him the same criticism he's received now,
Which, I mean, is a little bit of boomer logic, but that's who he is.
Yeah, and at the time, it probably was more acceptable in certain crowds.
Yeah,
it definitely was.
It was at least more mainstream.
Yeah. And, leave Edwards and Rooney's comments to retrospective and lack of understanding, but from hearing Shepard talk and apologize so many times, he seems like he had a better eye at the time, but just didn't have the power that many producers have nowadays.
And whether or not it was a good reason, they were, at the time, given, like, the perfect your mama joke, unfortunately. Yeah. The character was already written because this is based off of a book. They saw an opportunity. Was it a good one? No, but they ran with a joke.
Yeah, and from my side of things, I do agree that Yonioshi should have been recast differently because, I mean, even if he is a comedic actor that's playing off kind of a stereotype, even if the person is of Japanese origin playing it, it's more agreeable because that's someone representing their own culture. And they could have come back with, say, hey, it probably would have been done this way instead. Because I've seen people mock their parents on comedy shows, and it's very stereotypical. But and here's my other thing that I'm coming from too, is that we've seen other similar over-the-top characters, such as Kato Daisuke's oafish portrayal of Kichi in Yojimbo, the boar guy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we have those characters in the Country of Origins films, it's just the yellow face of the whole thing.
Was very untasteful.
And even nowadays it is. But for more perspective, if you can't get your hands on the DVD, I highly recommend getting into the segment Mr. Yonioshi and an Asian perspective. They definitely go into a lot more of like the culture of the time and some of the identities, such as the there's a phrase someone mentions in it, the nail that sticks up gets pounded down tradition that kind of prevented protesting at this time. So
yeah, you didn't want to. Unlike today, you did not want to be the squeaky wheel.
Yeah, things I'm just not well informed or as researched enough to really get into for this episode, and really isn't meant for this episode because it is a side character that you can get past this. The rest of the movie's fine. And
to be honest, neither of us have the history to talk about.
No, exactly. We're two pasty.
We are very pasty
cave dwellers.
Very pasty raccoons.
Except I don't eat peas out of a bowl. I will clarify that.
You do leave tea on your stove for days.
No, I make a fresh one every morning.
It's a lot of. It's a pot of tea. It's not even a kettle of tea.
Yeah, I drink a pot of tea a day because I've been too lazy to go out and buy a kettle.
Yeah. You and this main character's living situations very similar.
Yeah, I am a bit of a scatterbrain. I am an artiste. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, and that's what I love about this building is everyone in this building is in some way an artiste.
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, that besides Tiffany, well, Tiffany
is totally an artiste. She's just
in a different
robber.
Way. In a very, very different way. Yeah. And so from this, we cut to the outside as a man exits a taxi. And now buzzes our other protagonist that we learn her name is Miss Golightly, who is not even really awoken by the buzzing, but more so the cats.
Yes, I love Cat.
Which, fun fact, the cat's name is just Cat.
It's just Cat. If you really felt like it and want to be literature, the cat is a metaphor for the whole movie. She refuses to name Cat because he is wild and free, his own character. Again, because this is a book that book club people talked about, if you wanted to, you could make this real deep.
I mean, there is a depth to it, and I'll get into that a bit later.
And honestly, that's part of the fun of this, is you can either just lightly watch it and have a good time, or you can just peel this back.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, there's a lot. And yeah, the cat is very symbolic.
But he's also a cat.
Yeah.
This is a very good cat portrayal in a movie, too, because all of the things Cat does, very cat.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% owning two cats can confirm Cat is 100% cat.
It's not like a stage cat where you're like, wow, it sits and comes to you when you call it. What a good cat. No, this cat is a cat.
Fun fact, it was a stage cat because from what Shepard said, there were four different cats used. But
I counted 9.
I've heard there was 9 as well, but from what he said, there were 4.
Either way.
Speak of the devil and he shall come.
Hello.
Shut up, Charlie.
Yes.
Cats. But so here's where I want to get into it. So at this time, Hepburn really wasn't cast. Capote even wanted Moreau as Golightly, but the producers thought Hepburn was better for the role, and something that will come down later.
Also, Monroe's agents were very. They weren't thrilled with the portrayal that this character was getting.
So, from what I read, it actually wasn't her agent. It was more so her acting coach, Lee Strasberg, said it would be bad for her image to play a lady of the night.
And if you remember, he controlled a lot in her life.
Yeah, and he was also a big name teacher, so like his word kind of was like from what I was reading, he revolutionized like the art of teaching acting.
And there was other names that were brought up as potential, and because of not just what this part is saying, but because Monroe thought, and like I say Monroe in quotes because she wasn't making the choices, thought it was a little bit too risque for the image. Other actresses also turned this down.
Yeah, which include Shirley MacLaine and Kim Novak.
Yes.
And at the same time, Paramount thought Hepburn wouldn't play the role because her characters before had been sweet. But she was just... we also have to remember that Hepburn at this point was also just over a decade into her career, so she was a relatively new face.
She was. Like, people knew her, but this wasn't like a, oh my gosh, the stars shine for Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah. But, again, it ended up becoming her probably most iconic role besides some of her stupid costumes in My Fair Lady.
Oh, My Fair Lady... I think this one and My Fair Lady are, for most people, they're like top Monroe film. Or not Monroe, but Audrey Hepburn films.
Yeah. I gotta go with Wait Until Night, which... an offbeat one, but...
I understand.
Yeah, definitely different from what you're expecting from a Hepburn movie. And so, from here, the man comes in and asks to use her phone, which...
oldie-timey.
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple things with this. I always forget in some of these old movies because I do watch a lot of movies from before this era. So like between like the 60s and I would say 70s are like an era that I don't watch a lot of.
Sure.
It's always before or after. But there is a lot of good old soft focus that I forget about was really used around this time. For those who don't know what soft focus is, it's when, if you've ever watched like old Star Trek or anything, it's when the cameras or like the outline around a person is like a little bit blurry.
It's not like as sharp as we see now.
Yeah, it's generally used in like very romantic scenes, boy meets girl, where it's always stark. The girl's always in the soft focus. She's the glow of youth. And then the man's always rugged and
chiseled to the gods.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Everyone's cheekbones could cut ice.
Yeah, exactly. And couple other things. One, I do love her sleep mask.
Oh, I do too. I specifically love her sleep earbuds. I want them.
Which
they have tassels on them. How dumb. How absolutely ludicrous are these earbuds?
Beautiful. Her whole apartment is ludicrous.
It is, because all of her money has clearly gone specifically into nice clothes.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, for me, I like the sleep mask because it makes me think of the one from Gintama.
Yes, I understand.
I was very close to buying it like 2 weeks ago. I suggested it to Laffenstein for his stream, even though he didn't know it was from Gintama. I didn't realize on Amazon there was like one left in stock, and he immediately ordered it. So like I missed out on buying it like the next day. So
gotta wait.
Fingers crossed for it to come back. But also, who lets a random? Well,
first off, they're both beautiful.
Yeah, and her career.
Yeah.
She lets a bunch
both
of random
of their
men
careers.
In. Yeah.
And also, like, this is the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
This is a romance film, so there's a lot of dumb that's just allowed because of romance film logic. And also, like, this is a time period where asking to use a phone for your new neighbor is totally reasonable.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Because he wouldn't have one. Like, where would you borrow a phone from?
Right. I forget, like, how accustomed we still are to like pay phones and like that still being a part of our childhood. Like no one had cell phones.
No, and like you didn't have to go into someone's house to borrow a phone. Like, yeah, you might need to use a landline, but like generally you could walk somewhere and use the phone.
Yeah.
But this is an apartment full of extravagant artistes and one Audrey Hepburn and
yeah, well, and so that's the thing. I was looking around her apartment stuff, and yeah, it's sparsely decorated, but it is definitely of that scattered 60s like quirky style of like haphazardly put together. Her couch is a cut in 3/4 tub or 2/3 tub.
Yes,
and her telephone's in a suitcase on the ground
because she doesn't like to hear it ring.
Yeah,
because men keep calling her.
Yeah. But we also learned that she is a wanderer and in love with Tiffany's and she only goes to Tiffany's when she has the mean red. She's the epitome of the free-spirited woman.
She is, but she also suffers from not shopaholicism, but like her taste in life way outseeks her financial gains.
Yeah, because she also mentioned she's only ever got like $20 in the bank.
And it somehow always disappears.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, this really is kind of like the proto stereotype of the manic pixie dream girl.
Yes. Honestly, I feel like Audrey Hepburn in general, and this movie solidified this styling of her, really laid the groundwork for that type to be a thing.
Yeah.
Like, it was always a thing, but now it is not just a thing, but like, I could be glamorous and do this.
Yeah.
You know? Like, of course I'm going to spend my entire paycheck on one steak. I deserve it.
Yeah, I feel... Actually, that defines a lot of our generation.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie put in modern day would not be so different.
Very much the in Parks and Rec, treat yourself.
It is.
Yeah.
And she treat herself by going and looking at diamonds.
Yes. Even though she can't buy those.
No, she cannot afford a single one.
Although she probably could if she stopped
buying champagne,
stuff.
just have in her fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah, because that was the other option, was to do mimosa.
Yes.
Which we already did that for New Year's, so I figured bourbon.
Bourbon is
because
good.
It's mentioned once.
A lot of drinks are mentioned once.
Yeah. And speaking of mentions, the man mentions that he has come from Rome and was supposed to meet somebody in the apartment, but he forgot his key. Which, at the same time, Miss Golightly has realized that she is also running late to visit a person in prison to meet a mafia man.
I love that she knows he's a mafia man. And I do not think, and I will prove it throughout this film, I do not think she is actually dumb.
No.
I think she is intentionally ignorant.
Plausible deniability.
Exactly.
Which is why they'd never give the president the alien codes.
No, of course you wouldn't.
Which I'm not
also,
going...
look at our presidents. We would... No.
So,
I don't trust them with their own Twitter account.
Apparently Clinton is a huge alien nerd, and like he was asking a bunch of people on his first day, so can you tell me about the aliens?
And they're like, no, you're not high enough clearance.
Which, yeah... I'll save that for another one. We
will have an alien day 4th of July, don't worry.
Kind of.
We'll find something.
Actually, yes. Yes, we will. Because we have planned through July, so
of course.
I do have an in on that, yes. But anywho, I do love the dude's name, Sally Tomato.
I do too.
It is such an alias name.
It is so dumb.
But
I love it.
One thing I do want to bring up about these movies, and especially like this era of writing, is that there is such good free-flowing delivery of lines and dialogue.
There's so much more words in this film than modern film.
Yeah.
Like, think about a modern romance film, even a classy style one. It's mostly like visual scenes.
There's something deeper to the prince. I must break it.
That, or like, every 5 seconds we have to change location.
Yeah.
We're always going somewhere. We're always doing something together. They're always having an adventure. These guys leave the house like twice.
Yeah.
They even host the party in their own house.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing about that really holds up with these movies, is that the dialogue is so well done and why
so
they
well
last.
Done. And like, yes, some of the choices in words are dated.
Yeah.
But they're done so in a way that like, almost feels like fancy French, where you're like, yeah, of course you would say that, you silly, long cigarette smoking lady with a big hat.
Yeah. I'm going to leave my comments about the French at the door.
Yes, you will.
Yes.
Like, none of it feels... And none of the dialogue for this film, which some 60s films do unfortunately fall a little bit heavy in the dialogue problem, of like, too much slang. Which at the time, not a problem. No one really thought it was going to be a problem. But nowadays, everyone's like, you say what now?
Yeah.
That doesn't... You have to dig. This one, you don't have that problem. It's quaint, but you know exactly what it's happening, and you get to enjoy two beautiful people talking at each other a lot.
Yeah. No, it's very much like that. But in this dialogue, it happens real quick, but she mentions that she's paid for the weather reports, and she goes to the powder room for $50. And then on top of that, she gets $50 for cab fare, or she can she can coerce them into $50 for cab fare.
So theoretically, $100 a night.
And if I remember right, she says her pay is like $100 per visit or something.
For the mafia guy.
Yeah,
at
for
prison.
Sing Sing.
Yeah, so that's another $100 a week.
Yes, which this is very good in revealing that, one, she's a call girl without saying she's a call girl.
They spend a lot of time in this movie trying to tell you that she's not a call girl. She's definitely a call girl.
Mm-hmm. Also, I looked it up. That's about $464 in today's money.
Not bad.
No.
Not bad.
Not for a night of work.
No, and again, brings in the question of where all her money is going.
Exactly. And so, the man is worried, but Golightly says she can take care of herself. She's been on her own long enough.
Yeah.
They call a taxi, and a Mrs. Tallinson, the man's decorator, has arrived in a cab, or was in the cab that they hailed. Apparently, Papard was, like I mentioned, the biggest pain in the ass, but he and the decorator, Patricia Neal, had worked together, and she said between the last time they had, or between rehearsal and the shooting of this movie, his personality had changed.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think it was something about, like, making a big movie with Audrey Hepburn kind of thing.
It was also reported that he was interested in learning method acting, and that there's a chance that went too far.
Yeah, as it does with a lot of method actors.
Yeah, and unfortunately, while in this movie, everyone's a bit of an ass, and thus it's charming, in real life, it doesn't work like that.
The only method actor who I've heard is charming as all hell, depending on his role, Viggo Mortensen.
Well, I mean, the man's charming all the time.
Oh, yeah, he's got that very handsome, rustic look.
Yes.
Yes. But he was still... I really liked him in The Green Mile, where, like...
I did, too.
Because I kind of didn't recognize him in the first part, because it's like, oh, you put on a shitload of weight for this movie.
Dedicated.
Method acting.
Method acting at its finest.
More understandable than Nick Cage's nouveau shamanism.
You know what? There's levels to method acting.
To be fair, I do think I understand Nicolas Cage's nouveau shamanism, but...
Yeah. In a backwards loop-de-loop way.
It's just method acting, but his own brand of it.
Yes, it is. Good for him. Do whichever works for
nouveau
you.
shamanism does have a nice ring to it, though.
You know what? The entire country knows this man's name. He does whatever he wants.
Exactly. And so, at night, Mr. Yunioshi is awoken by music and someone banging at Miss Golightly's door as she sneaks out up the fire escape to see the dude sleeping as the decorator leaves and puts cash on the table.
Someone selling their ding-a-ling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, slinging the ding-a-ling has a nice ring to it.
For however much money was just put on that nightstand.
I mean, what was
Plus
it?
an apartment.
I finally got around to I watched a good chunk of Liar Liar for the first time.
A good one.
I still haven't seen it fully, but there's that part where he's at the judge and he's explaining that I had a less than pleasant sexual encounter the night before, or less than fulfilling or a disappointing sexual encounter.
Yes.
And the judge is like, get used to that, young man. Makes me think of that a little bit. But she invades his privacy because she's realized, she gets what's up.
We are two of the same artistes in this building.
Yes, I like that term, artiste, body artistes.
Body artistes of the same nature.
Yes, which, side note, his apartment is gaudy to all hell. It is horrid.
Yeah, because his decorator, quote unquote, decorated it for him. And you know he's not going to tell her that he doesn't like it.
No.
You love whatever that free apartment's decorated in. It's beautiful. I love it. It's great.
As my dad says, if it's free, it's for me.
Exactly.
Also of note, only the stairwell and the outside shots, and by stairwell, it's the fire escapes.
Yes.
Or, sorry, only the stairwell and the outdoor shots of New York are on location. The fire escapes and all the apartments are shot in a sound studio.
Yes, but in case you were wondering, yes, the apartment that, like, from the outside you see is very expensive nowadays. Sold for quite a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Someone was keeping track of it, because what else do New York people do other than keep track of what movies and have what buildings in them?
I have a feeling at some point there's been so much shot that you just kind of, like,
Feel like we could just put the
yeah.
entire New York City together.
Yeah, they just have like a sheet list of like, or like an AR thing that pulls up in front of you on like your smart glasses of like, this movie shot here, here, and here.
I would pay money to do that to her.
To be fair, when we had a student trip in Chicago, one of my buddies and I, we went on a semi-Dark Knight.
Yeah, that's
tour.
what you do.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing in Chicago.
Yeah, it was fun.
We were supposed to be on an architecture trip. We all just watched Dark Knight and found all the buildings.
It was great for us because most of them are shot in office buildings, and we were studying office buildings that semester.
One of our buildings happened to have the person that we were interviewing in. We got to see it from above.
Oh, yeah.
We were like, yeah, this is totally for research, and we're not all just obsessed with this movie right now.
Yeah.
Definitely for that reason.
Oh, it's a fun time just finding out what was shot where.
So interesting.
Which, so we've been to shooting areas in our area.
Exactly.
Yeah, which there's been more being shot here, too, which...
You know, good for them, I guess.
Hollywood of the Ozarks.
Someone's got to do it, and it better not be Branson, so we'll take it.
Branson's got too much Christmas crap in tourism.
Branson's got too much Jesus.
Yeah.
There's too much Jesus in Branson to be a film studio.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the movies shot in this area either, so...
They're less Jesus.
Yeah, one of our electrical engineers, also named Chris, he went to school with a guy who's now doing stuff in Hollywood.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Live your dream.
Chubby dude with glasses from Hot Tub Time Machine.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah, Chris went to school with him.
Wow, small world.
Yeah. Shot a movie, I think, called Arkansas recently.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that guy.
That guy. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so besides people we know, the dude is supposedly looks like Miss Golightly's brother, Fred, who is in the army, and she is too prying, but she understands him. She keeps saying, oh, I know this. And
I got you.
She's like, oh, don't worry about it. We're just friends.
Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Yeah. Also, we learned that she left home at 14, and she sorely misses her brother.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part where this is all about like her family and why the producers chose Hepburn over Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't feel Monroe, and I understand it. Monroe, for the most part, had like the really ditzy.
She was more bubbly.
Yeah, exactly.
And Audrey didn't yet have like a solidified style yet.
Mm-hmm.
She was definitely the darker of the two starlets, but she wasn't like yet the dark and mysterious past lady that she then later became. Partially because of this movie. Exactly.
And also a couple historical things of note at this point. Since the movie is set in the 60s, the original was in the 20s, just for an FYI.
Mm-hmm.
This is also about the beginning of the sexual revolution that lasted from the 60s to the 80s.
Yes.
As well, it's the beginning of the second wave feminist and women's liberation movement.
Yes.
So just a couple historical settings for when this movie is actually taking place.
And to give the modern audience a little tiny bit of insight onto our male character.
Mm-hmm.
While today, a man selling his ding-a-ling below a lady selling her titties is not weird or uncommon. Back then, this wasn't seen as him selling anything. This was him as an artist, a struggling artist, and this was his patron. And it was a common trope. Granted, the way that the director and the writers wrote this, it's pretty clear what was actually happening. But at the time, they managed to get away with this because this trope was so embedded in culture.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, TV shows, if you had an artistic character, you expected him to be living in the shed of some wealthy woman.
I just thought of a part that would be great for like a Monty Python-esque movie.
Yes.
Just some dude on the street. Twig and berries! Twig and berries for sale!
Artist here! Yes. That is accurate.
It's very much that tongue-in-cheek reference, nod, and like, hey, because he even mentions that he's a dirty and sensual writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, nowadays, all of us are past the pearl-clutching phase of times gone by, and have, I don't know a single person who bats two eyelashes at this man, but back in the day, he was not selling his dingling. He was an artiste, remember that. He was, though, however, selling his dingling.
He was a man whore.
For sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And we don't know what his book was about, but I bet you it was juicy. Hot, steamy, juicy.
It's what, the 9 lives or something?
I have no idea. If it's a made-up title to tie back into the cat reference for the rest of the book,
yeah.
I guarantee you that because of this man and his styling, this was a juicy, hot, steamy book.
50 Shades of Grey.
Hopefully better. The book was garbage.
I will never read that book.
Don't do it. Waste of my afternoon.
I'll watch the movie at some point just out of morbid curiosity, but that
one at least you can laugh at.
It's a long way down the line.
I understand.
And so the pair go to bed and as Golightly starts to have nightmares and leaves because Fred is the one who's being too prying and she hates Snoops. Yeah. I hate this part.
I do too. It's whatever. It's over quickly though, thank God.
Yeah. And in the morning, Frank has a message on his is it Frank or is it Fred? It's Fred.
It is now Fred for the rest of the movie.
Until the very end.
Yes.
Which I think I have Frank a lot more in the outline. I apologize.
It's okay. We really don't care what this man's name is.
Yeah. But he has a message for drinks and he gets a call from his decorator.
Oh, his decorator friend.
Who says that she can't meet him tonight because someone's in town.
And I love how she speaks to him because it's very obviously written that she thinks she's speaking to him in disguise. She's called a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. She's called one of her buddies that she was going to have dinner with this evening. But she keeps calling him darling.
Sausage dinner.
Yes. 100%. And her, someone else, it is implied her husband, is in the room with her while she is boldly making this call.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hilariously clear that she thinks she's being stealthy and not one person on this planet is fooled.
No.
Not even her husband making himself a cocktail in the background.
I don't know. He's such a minor character. We have no clue.
We don't know. We don't care.
Yeah. Because, I'm gonna look this up because this is gonna kill me.
Uh-huh.
They just referred to him as Paul on IMDb. Whatever. I'm gonna use Frank and Fred interchangeably. Mm-hmm. I apologize.
It's Fred.
Yeah. So he shows up at Golightly's and it's obviously... He hasn't realized that it was supposed to be a party. Yes. He's thinking he's there to have solo drinks.
Yes. Surprise, there's 20 people in this apartment.
Yes.
Maybe more.
And this is how the movie really begins to build her character without Frank being a Snoop. Because he starts talking with people at the party and he meets a Hollywood producer who's like, oh yeah, she's a phony. But is she, though? I can't tell at this point.
Yeah, I know. It's great. And I think the reason why this scene works so well is because of the amount of time they put into this scene. This scene took 6 days to shoot. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, they said, well, this has got to be a realistic party. Here's a shit ton of champagne. Here's a shit ton of booze. Here's some hot dogs. Have a party, guys. Get wasted. And then to make it look like
let's rephrase that. Real hot dogs, not...
Yes. New York hot dogs. Let's be very clear. Dirty water dogs from down the street.
I mean, I feel that, that's the name for a street.
Probably.
Male sex worker.
Oh, probably. I mean, it should be.
Yeah.
That'd be hilarious. And then my favorite addition, to really solidify that this is a free and fun party, smoke machines that you use to calm bees down were brought in to make enough smoke to make it appear that everyone chain smoked to the end of the earth for this scene.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because the actors, A, not all of them smoked, and B, no one can smoke that much.
Oh, no.
I mean, I'm sure someone can, please don't prove me wrong. But they brought in fake smoke to make it smoky enough for this party.
Oh, yeah. Well, and on top of that, so we mentioned that there's a bit of a chaotic montage that took a long time to shoot, but
and it's all good background stuff, though.
So on top of that, we are introduced to also how where Golightly actually shines in her talent for knowing people and be sociable.
She is a true socialite.
Yeah,
in a professional way.
But what makes this party actually really feel legitimate is because almost every single scene was improvised.
Yes. And I think the part that even puts it over the top for me is we see every kind of drunk on the planet. And some of them get their little highlight moment, like the girl talking to herself in the mirror. And, the other ones fighting each other.
Then later on in the scene crying.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in the background even are just random, like, different types and levels of drunk people. No one is the same level of party.
No. And what's great about this, too, is that it does have that feeling of, even though in the larger wide shots, it's very choreographed.
Yes.
But it's all the close-up stuff is what makes it feel haphazard. Especially like the tall, as they refer to, Amazonian women who fell over. That was all like, hey, can you do this? All right.
No problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is very chaotic. And I understand, like, taking 7 days to shoot that so you can get enough material to have fun with.
Exactly.
Yeah. What was it? We were talking with a handful of designers, because there's a weird amount of like people on my team who like are really into film and stuff too.
Oh, cool.
But they were talking about like how easy it is to edit nowadays compared to like back then.
Yes.
Where like you could film.
You had to hope you got the scene.
Yeah, you had to hope you got the scene, and then on top of that, like it was a physical editing, cutting, gluing process.
Yes.
Whereas today it's just like
cut and snip.
Snip,
and if you messed
together.
up, Control Z.
Yep, exactly. Which, it's an interesting thing to think on that, like, we don't really think of as growing up with film, like actual film, and me, myself, taking actual film course, like film photography courses.
Yeah.
Wet Room is fantastic. It's fascinating.
So interesting.
Yeah. But, Yoshida, or, it's not Yoshida.
The man upstairs.
Man upstairs is continuing to be annoyed.
Can't blame him. It's like 2 a.m.
Yeah. And the party is broken up as the police arrive and are directed by Miss Golightly herself as she's walking with a rich man that Fred seems to disapprove of.
Yes. She has spent the evening pinpointing who is rich and what level of rich people are.
Exactly. And so from here we cut to Sing Sing, where Golightly is meeting with Sally Tomato.
Oh, Sally Tomato. I love a mobster.
I don't know why I went Southern with that.
Neither does this man.
I can't do an old school gangster accent. That's why I went Sally Tomato. It is a challenge
to do an old timey mobster, New York mobster accent.
Oh yeah, and I mean this is a weird. There's a little bit of a weird part too, because she's brought along Fred with him, and they're dealing with. He mentions that she deals with less than good people. At least she's got you, and he's like, I don't even know about that. But then he also has like his notebook, and he's like, if you took this, you could publish it into something interesting.
Yeah, okay. Did you not catch what all that's about?
It's about her exploits. Because it's her banknotes explaining how she's spending money. And
she writes down who she's seen.
I did miss that.
It would have been what Fred thinks would be a juicy gossip story. And the other guy goes, no, this is a sad romance of a single sad woman.
Yep.
And so that's what was going on, because of Mobster, who is requiring her to do this, accurately takes down every piece of money coming and going, and she has to write down who it is actually from. Not like, granted, some people got some nicknames here or there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you put together who's who real quick and who has been to see this scandalous lady. Because
Golightly throughout the movie references a fair amount of the men as rats.
Yes.
And super rats.
Yes, and dirty super big rats.
Yeah, which really shows like her mentality of like, despite the stereotypically looked down work she's doing, she looks down even upon her clients.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the people that she is socializing with, because she wants, and I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. She also doesn't approve of any of them.
I'm sorry, I've been going down this weird rabbit hole of occasionally it pops up and started with a Kanye West song of them mixing that with Cruel Angel's Thesis.
Yeah.
But I've gotten like so many songs that they've paired with Cruel Angel's Thesis that work so well with it because of that. And I hate that you brought that up again.
You're welcome.
Thank you. But one thing I've noted as well, as we've seen in this scene, the weather report, she says it in earshot of the guard, like yells it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, she is not dumb, but she is plain ignorance smartly.
Yeah.
She is trying to make it clear to everyone who will listen, boy, that's a weird weather report.
Yeah.
It's never snowed there. Like, she knows goddamn well it's not about snow.
Here's exactly what she is. She's a kid who's gotten in trouble of like, did you draw on your brother? No. Well, how did he draw on him? He did that himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she's doing so in, like, the smartest way she thinks she can. Because I'm sure in her mind, this is easy money. And it's a lot of easy money. She's not going to just tell this golden piggy bank no. Yeah.
Well, and at the same time, she is also a kid.
Yeah. 100% sure.
She might be dealing with a world of...
She's under 30 in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, like, later on we'll talk about it more. A probably underdeveloped mentally under 30-year-old.
Maybe not just that, just a bit naive.
Someone who, in nowadays, we would recommend therapy to.
Very much so.
A lot of therapy.
A lot of movie characters could probably do with some therapy.
This girl more than most, I think.
Yeah. And so, from this, Fred begins to write My Friend as Go Lightly sings Moon River on the Fire Escape.
Oh, such a good song.
Yes, I actually added it to a Spotify playlist.
As you should. If you were curious, of course this song won awards. It was also rewritten to match Audrey Hepburn's limited range. Because originally it was written for Monroe, who had a higher octave.
Okay, so here's a couple things on that. One, commentary-wise, I found it funny, and I guess I kind of get it now, or understand a little bit, but Shepard kept bringing up how odd like a typewriter was in the modern era, and how no one would understand an ink ribbon, and it's like...
I think people get it.
Some people would.
Yeah.
I don't think people a little bit younger than my youngest brother would.
I would argue that artsy-fartsy romantics will totally still get it.
Yes.
And that's who this movie's for.
Yes. So back to Hepburn. One thing I actually, with this song, I mean, as much as people bitch about dubbing of My Fair Lady.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
I do think she's not a bad singer. She's just not a musical singer. She has a very folk sound kind of song to her voice. A little bit of a raspiness that you don't want really in a theater. Yes,
and that was the big difference between this song and My Fair Lady's music. My Fair Lady's music was written without her in mind. And most, especially since My Fair Lady was meant to be Broadway-esque style musical, the vocal range that you need for that, whether or not it seems like it when you're watching, is pretty big. You really do need quite a flexible voice. And most people, unless you are practicing regularly, don't have that.
No.
And Audrey Hepburn, while a good singer, did not have a flexible enough voice to hit some of those.
No, but she doesn't have a bad voice either.
No, which I think makes this song better. Because it's not, unlike My Fair Lady, which is a musical, everything is random song and dance, this feels like an organic girl with a guitar singing sort of thing.
And at the same time, it kind of leans into that she is from the Midwest. She's from...
Just say, she's from Hoboken Nowhere.
Yeah, Hoboken Nowhere. But it feels like it's also a song that's just kind of from her area, too. Like, maybe she didn't compose it, but like...
But everyone learns how to strum a guitar for free time, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Also... Paramount wanted to cut the song.
They did. And you know what they all said? Over my dead body.
That's what Hepburn said. Everyone else is like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
The directors then later in an interview mimicked and said, over our dead bodies, reinforcing that they were completely behind her.
Oh, yeah. And so after this, the decorator shows up.
The decorator.
And she explains that she and Fred are... being watched. They think they're being watched by Bill. There was a suspicious man out front.
And what if that's her husband?
It wasn't her husband. It was someone her husband hired.
Oh, even worse.
The chase is up. Oh no.
I love how somewhere out there is, from this other woman's point of view, a like master romance book in like in her head. She's the main character.
It's very soap opera-esque.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I love how this movie, while having her, this extravagant unnecessary character, this over-the-top personality who,
Mm-hmm.
despite being over the top, is incredibly realistic. She is barely a side character.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we barely care about this woman.
Yeah, well, and I think it further exemplifies that. I mean, we had the one mention that they weren't going to meet up. We know he's slinging his sausage.
Yes.
That after Sally Tomato has said, at least she's got you, thinking he's a good guy, it's even further showing that he's not a good guy. But at the same time, he and Golightly are kind of, they're both free spirits, but they're kind of trapped in what they're having to deal with.
They're free spirits who's got a hole in their money pocket.
Trying to make a living, that's what I have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I appreciate the try to make a living phrase. I think both of them could easily make a living, and both have expensive fucking taste.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But from here, Fred goes out for a stroll through Central Park while being followed by a man who...
That he totally knows he's being followed.
Yeah.
He's like, alright, time to see if this fucker's really following me.
Yeah.
And goes and takes him on an excursion.
Yeah, just through some weird random stuff, and then sits down, and then the guy pulls up, and he's like,
I need your assistance, son.
I want to bring my child bride home.
Alright, now we're here. Now I can bitch.
Yeah.
Alright, so now we're introduced to what we learn is Doc. And at
Yes.
first we all assume that Doc is Audrey Hepburn's father.
Not necessarily. We think at first that he's confronting them.
Yeah.
Potentially the woman that Fred is slinging his sausage to,
His patron, if you will.
his patron, is being followed, and potentially she's a gold digger.
Yes.
But we are introduced that he is Doc, and he is Lulu May's husband.
Who is Lulu May, you ask? Why, Lulu May is the 14-year-old child that he married, also known as the main character.
Well,
Holly.
yeah, and that also Holly has adopted children from the Doc's previous marriage.
And if you look at the photo of, which is only on screen very briefly,
Mhm.
but if you get a good time to pause that, you will notice that the adopted children and Holly are very close in age to each
Mhm.
other.
Yeah.
And also he brings up, oh look, and this is Fred, her brother, that she loves more than anything on this planet, who I immediately shipped off to the army when she left.
Yeah. Also on that, I did a little bit of looking out of curiosity. I forgot what I found and I didn't write it down. I was looking up like the legal age at the time, and it seems kind of around this time it was still on, especially in the Midwest, like sketchy waters.
Oh, it was so hella sketchy. And this
Yeah.
man claims to be from Texas, middle of nowhere Texas, which back in the day was still a little wild, wild west, you know, every man for himself, town not big enough for the both of us sort of mindset.
Yeah, 16-year-olds were getting married to 30, 60-year-old men.
Unfortunately. However, it is made abundantly clear in this movie, with everything the doc says, that he found Miss whatever her fucking pig name is. Mary.
Lulu May.
That one. I hate
Pig
it.
name?
Yeah.
Pig name?
Okay. I have a thing with double names. That to me, they always sound like what you name barn animals. That's what you call the little suey pig. I'm sorry. I'm sure someone's name is actually that. I can't unsee Wilbur.
I apologize for Chris insulting anyone currently named Lulu May, though I do not apologize for insulting the French language.
Okay, so we've both insulted at least a handful of people.
Yeah. I mean, I am responsible.
Yes,
At
we're
least
both
you're not-
responsible for our insults.
Yeah, at least you're not responsible for probably scaring away any French listener we've had.
That is possible, but I might have just alienated an entire section of the Midwest. AKA my own family's section of the Midwest.
Nah, you said they don't listen anyway.
They do not. The ones who still live there don't even have internet, so we're good. But yeah, he makes it abundantly clear that he found Lulu May, aka Holly, aka Audrey Hepburn. He found her stealing food from him with her brother to feed her brother.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, sweet child, what if we got married? And she was like, if we got married, I'd get to live here, right? And he's like, yes, you would.
Yeah.
That's creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
That is a pedophile. This man is a pedophile. And you know what everyone online is upset about? Not this man. Not this man.
This is the one you're
I
reading
am
into.
so disgusted by Doc.
Yeah. I mean, I get with today's hindsight.
No. A 14-year-old child, even back in the day, was still a pimply 14-year-old child.
We don't know when they actually got married. It's never really said.
No, it is. He says he married her at age 14.
Oh,
he
yeah.
He says it in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're justified.
I am so upset. If he had been like, oh, I rescued her, and then we had this weird, complicated relationship till she was at least 16, then I've been like, wow, old-timey times were weird and gross. No, this man is a predator.
I immediately thought back to Dazed and Confused. That's what I like about high school girls.
Yes!
I get older and they stay the same age.
Okay, and then I am further proven because he goes, I need your help finding my bride.
Yeah, I need to bring her back home. I gotta talk to her.
And he, like, at no point is he making much of an effort to hide the fact that, A, he married a child, who then he pampered over his own children because he made his own children do all the housework to pamper his child bride, to bribe her into staying.
Yeah.
And then he sold her brother off to the army because he ate too much peanut butter. And then he has the audacity to look her dingling boyfriend in the eyeballs and go, can you help me get her back?
To be fair,
can you break the ass to her real slow like?
He doesn't know their relationship, probably.
He's made a good assumption. Two beautiful people live in an apartment in a romance film. Somebody's fucking.
Okay.
And then, the next scene, dingling boyfriend, who's got balls for brains, goes, yeah, alright, I'll bring you to your child bride, you weird creepo pedo.
Yeah.
Walks her weird husband man up to see, doesn't ask any questions either. It's just like, oh, god damn it, she's taken. Shit. This is the line in the sand, dingling man.
Well.
This is the line in the sand. She has a long-lost husband who married her as a child, and you're like, oh shit, she's married.
So here, okay. I will defend Dingling Boyfriend a little bit.
Okay, please try.
Here's my thoughts. Mm-hmm. So, as we know, he's a man who's trying to save and protect her.
Yes.
So
there is some two-sided I can fix the broken thing going on here.
So from his side of things, he's potentially seeing this as a way to save her, to get her back out of the dangerous lifestyle that she's chosen, back to her home, back to potentially her brother.
And her children who are a year younger than her.
Yeah.
Okay, I will give you that because as of now, we assume the brother's coming home from war.
Yes.
And that is a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll give you that.
There is a little bit to it. It's not a lot, but it's a little.
That is the grain of sand I'm going to hold on to. Because in the next scene, he walks him up, knocks on the door, and he's like, calling you by your name, Southern child. Mm-hmm. And she goes, oh, my brother's here.
Well,
surprise, it's not your brother, it's your weird, creepy husband.
No, and I think also what happens is, like, because when Fred brings Doc to go lightly, the decorator leaves, and they realize they're all clear. Like, I think it's more so also to, like, get a weight off their chest instead of like, oh well, he didn't bring the guy home. What did he do? Oh no, the plot's thickening like a soap opera.
It really is.
Also thickening like she wants him to, but
yeah, I mean, man.
Yeah. But even from then, like we get right after that Go Lightly goes to ask Fred for help because she got away from the marriage and it was annulled a long time ago.
It was annulled because she was a child.
Yeah. Also, more soft focus shots.
It's very nicely.
Yeah,
very nicely shot.
And I mean, there's a couple things with this because he agrees to see what he can do because they're at the bus station. They're at a Greyhound bus station, mind you. And Doc starts off as still kind of sweet. And Golightly is like, I'm a free spirit, I can't be held down.
Also, I'm a child, please don't touch me.
And even what's even further is Doc is not as sweet as he seems because he's kind of using Fred as a blackmail card.
100% he is using. I bet you anything, before she ran away, he already had threatened her that he was going to ship her brother off to something if she left. And she was like, I love you, like, sweet Fred. I'm going to go make us money in New York. Goodbye.
Yeah. I'll make sure that you can have a nice living kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a theme for her character where everyone around her, for the most part, is kind of manipulating her.
Oh, yeah.
Or trying to manipulate her. But at the same time, she's also manipulating them for her own survival, and which forces her to constantly be on the run, which we see from the very beginning of the movie that she's constantly being chased by men that she's obviously swindled.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But we also really get to see her break as a character because... While she acts tough, she is still, as Shepard put it, she is still Lulu May. Despite how hard she tries to run from herself, that is who she is.
See, I took it as a slightly different interpretation.
Yeah.
So when she goes on to the line where she talks about how I'm not that person anymore, I'm this person, and then she turns to Dingling Boyfriend and is like, somewhere deep down I'm still Lulu May. I kind of took it as more of like, that's the past that I never want to be. Yeah. I've had to give her up. She was not ever going to make it, like, at all. Not just in, like, she wasn't going to be able to buy Tiffany diamonds, but, like, she was stealing eggs to survive. Yeah. Sort of thing.
Yeah, and she's stealing something else, maybe.
Yes, but it's also, like, throughout the entire scenes that Doc is there. Well... It is just, like, reinforced and reapplied that, like, she probably now has some sort of body image or eating disorder because, like, Doc spends a lot of time being like, girl, you're too skinny.
Yeah, because he even says to Fred that it's like, make sure she eats every once in a while.
And, like, sometimes in old-timey films, and, like, I got this from my great-grandparents, that was like a, I love you, gotta feed you sort of thing. Yeah. But... the way that all of it is, like, piled on, all of the insults that are, like, backhandedly given to her from Doc just kind of reinforce in my head this idea that, like, no, she is never wanting to be Lulu May ever again. That is her child.
I will disprove that a little bit.
Okay.
Because, as Shepard said, she is still Lulu May. Think about it. When Doc found her, she was stealing eggs to survive. Now she's stealing $50 for a taxi ride home. She's got men chasing her because she's stealing from... She is technically stealing from them. She is technically
stealing from them. I would argue she is not Lulu May because Lulu May's one downfall was to let someone own her. And this current person, while still thieving her way through life...
Still Lulu May.
No. Lulu May was the idiot who let someone else take care of her. This woman would never...
To a point.
And I will make this point again later because this is the difference between the book and the movie.
Okay. Well, I'll from what the movie evidence has shown me, she's still stealing the metaphorical egg.
Yes, she is. She is 100%.
Exactly. And so from this, Doc is sent back and Golightly, and now she knows she can't escape her, or she can't escape her past still. I mean, she's still chased by men. But she has a new case of the Mean Reds and needs to get drunk.
Yes.
Which we cut to a strip joint.
All right.
A very...
classy.
Toned around strip joint because, one, she's wearing a stepper dress, which is stupid, so they are towing around it.
Oh, yes, very much so. Also, I love how this movie, in multiple scenes, not just this one's the most blatant, but multiple scenes, you are given the hint that maybe we're going to see some titties. And not a one titty is found in this movie.
There's a nice amount of side boob in this scene.
There is some side boob, but there is not full titty.
It did not qualify a report to Chaos.
It did not, unfortunately.
But she hasn't streamed in a while because she's been busy. So.
I understand.
But I still keep up the reports to her.
Good, as you should.
But also at the same time too, like this scene. To be fair, the woman is very well endowed.
I mean, it is the classiest titty bar I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, But Go Lightly is also like kind of criticizing the dancer of like how they both kind of work the same, but the dancer's given better pay. She has more prestige.
It also makes me laugh a little bit because in her drunken head, she has somehow done this math where she's like, no. Titty dancing lady isn't as successful as me because I definitely make more money than whatever titty dancer is making. And then within the same breath, she goes, but for some reason, I'm always broke.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is true drunk ramble. Like, none of it makes sense even to her.
Well, it also shows so much that she's a kid because she's not able to hold on to the money. It's like whenever you give like a kid $20 and it burns a hole in their pocket.
She never had anyone to show her how to save money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a miracle the girl can feed herself.
She's still Lulu May.
No, she's still a dumbass, but she is not. She is no longer Lulu May because Lulu May got given food. She had 3 square meals that her child, that is the same age as her, made for her every day. This woman hasn't eaten a meal in 30 years.
Her meals have been replaced with booze because remember the party scene? There's that guy who's like,
yes.
I bought the Kentucky bourbon, you owe me, and she's like, in a minute.
Yes.
She's given booze.
Yes.
Yeah. And some jewelry, I think it's mentioned too.
A few
it's
things.
Never classy.
It's never what she
It's never
wants.
Tiffany's.
No.
Yeah. But also I do like the scene because Fred is still just kind of a normal dude, but kind of is like, I've seen tits.
I've seen tits. These are good tits, but also you look like you're going to hurl. Let's leave.
Because there's a very iconic glasses tipping scene from Hepburn of like, ooh, va va voom.
And he's over here like, boobs. I love boobs.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you, Fred. Because back home, Fred does take Go Lightly upstairs as she has decided to go clean and get married finally.
Good for her. Who's she marrying?
The piggy guy that she was with
the ninth
earlier.
richest man in the United States or some nonsense like that.
Yeah, some stupid stuff like that, which...
A rich man. She's a gold digger.
Yeah, and there's further treatment of... bad treatment of Yoshida.
Yeah. This poor man cannot get a break.
No, he can't, but I do like his character at this point as well. Just because there is this... like, this stupid, Uniyoshi is his name. I don't know why I type Yoshi. It's Uniyoshi. I apologize. There's this stupid, like, level of him just ramping up his threats of, like, I'll call the police. This time I'll call the fire department, or...
I'm going to call the FBI.
Yeah, it's just, like, this level of...
It is a very good escalation of a neighbor who is dealing with some really obnoxious neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that.
I understand completely. I now have no neighbors because of this.
Yeah. But from this, Fred later confronts Go Lightly as she crosses his line, but immediately goes to make up with her after getting a check because he's finally stepping free.
Yeah, and I like that they are meant to be like parallels of each other.
Mm-hmm.
But one finds success before the other.
Yeah, and we've also learned that like he's starting to get traction, but she's not, because her mark for the husband was nothing more than a rat. He really wasn't rich. It was his parents who was rich, and he actually owed a lot of money to people. And
she can't even fathom owing that much money.
Mm-hmm. And because she's kind of given up on that guy, they both kind of reveal their true feelings-ish, but they don't really go any further. There's like that inkling of if they kissed, maybe, or that they don't.
And I like this. Normally in romance films, this tension's kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there to make the final scene worth it.
Yeah.
But in this movie, somehow, because it is immediately paired with, all right, time for us to go do things we've always wanted, which ends up being a really good character building as opposed to like, shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
In most rom-coms. Because of that, this, for some reason, feels much more genuine.
Yeah. Shit doesn't really feel like it hits the fan between the two of them.
No.
Necessarily.
And it's not, like, the shenanigans they get up to all feel like real personality, like, parts of themselves. Yeah. As opposed to, like, oh my gosh, the mob whisked us away for a night of fun on our date night. Like, don't get me wrong. love the premise, but not very realistic.
Sounds like a movie I haven't seen.
Yeah, it is.
Because from here, the pair actually do go out to do things that they have never done before. And because of their profession, Golightly mentions that she's never been out on a normal morning. She's been out on mornings, but never in a normal morning.
Like, she hasn't woken up and then left the house.
Yeah, she's normally coming home in the morning.
Yes.
Where we finally get to Tiffany's.
Tiffany's.
This was actually shot in the interior on a Sunday with the actors on a widescreen that took 5 hours to do.
Yep.
This also marked the first time since the first time ever, I think, that Tiffany's opened their doors on a Sunday.
Yes, they are renownedly known for not really breaking of their high-end tradition.
Mm-hmm. And this is really where we get the setting of her beauty standards and the classiness of the joint, as well as explaining that they only have $10 to spend because she mentions that she likes pearls, but they don't look good on young women. No.
Diamonds do not look good on anyone under 40.
I thought it was pearls.
No, she can wear pearls. She doesn't think diamonds look good on anyone under 40. She thinks they'd be tacky on her.
I thought it was pearls.
I guarantee you it's diamonds.
I
guarantee it to you because while she is obsessed...
Oh, no. I know what it is diamonds because I'm getting it mixed up with Tanner's now wife. Still weird to say.
Yes.
We were out shopping with them and they were mentioning like how old pearls look. I'm getting my wires
Nowadays,
crossed.
that sentiment has flipped.
Okay.
But back in that time, it is interesting to see how she has educated herself because there are a lot of little things that if she was truly a high-class lady, she would not have done in this movie. But because she's not, because she's just idolizing it and teaching herself all of this, she knows some of the rules. She knows that diamonds under 40 do age you. Doesn't look great. It looks a little bit tacky if you're that young.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't know that eating a pastry on the street is also tacky as hell.
Is it?
Yeah. If you're going to be rich and fancy, you do not eat standing on the street eating a pastry, staring into Tiffany's.
Well, I'm obviously not classy.
That's okay. I choose not to be.
Oh, I forget you taught this crap.
I was a raccoon and tiara.
I love that. That is a very good imagery, and we both have the raccoon eyes of architects still.
Yes, it's never leaving.
Never. But anywho, back to the fashion. Also, I do love how the shopkeeper is still trying to be very polite by offering them a sterling silver telephone dial.
To be honest with you, this gentleman is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Because they could have easily written him off very, too snobby.
Yeah.
Like, oh, obviously you broke motherfuckers can't be in here.
Yeah.
But instead, it's a real human being like, this poor couple can't afford shit.
Mm-hmm.
I will engrave your stupid aluminum ring that you got from a Cracker Jack box.
Yeah, which was what he got with the dock, which is kind of like the passing of the torch a little bit.
It is. Also, fun fact, the ring in the Cracker Jack box is incredibly rare.
And it took them like 60 or so boxes.
200
Holy shit.
Because it is one of the rarest prizes you can get.
Oh, well, yeah, and I mean, it's aluminum at the time, too, which...
Oh, I mean, this ring is the cheapest thing you can imagine, but it was, the shiny Pokemon of its day.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he is he is one of the more memorable, side characters of this movie, too.
I love the Tiffany worker, and I have no reason to. Because
I do also like this, because Fred is still being the romantic, and he's seeing if they could get the Cracker Jack box engaged, because they're like, well... The Sterling telephone dialer is nice, but...
it's not very romantic.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking a little something more,
Yeah, and he's like, well, we could engrave this, and the guy's like, well, was it purchased here? And he's like, well, no.
Obviously not.
We're like, well, for the couple who has it all, I think we could work something out.
Yes.
Which is a really great thing, because it also... This is where the rest of the movie becomes a little bit more... It starts to get into almost fairy tale territory, because it's furthering the idea and her idealization of Tiffany's that nothing could go wrong at Tiffany's.
Yes. And I honestly, this movie never breaks that ideal, which is part of the reason why Tiffany, the company, bothered to go all out for this movie. Mm-hmm. And by all out, I mean they opened on a Sunday.
Yeah.
But for them, that's a lot, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew that for decades to come, people would come to this Tiffany's and take pictures of themselves outside the front of the store.
Yep.
Broke people cannot afford to be here, but they're going to come take pictures.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, this movie really helped solidify Tiffany's for future generations. Because honestly, most jewelry stores nowadays, people aren't crazy about. No one's, like, you have to be in a whole nother level to be like, ah, yes, jewelry. And even then, the places that you could go and get them from, you don't need this whole store.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you don't need to browse.
And I think it's something to the quality, too, because I was actually out wedding ring shopping with my brother and his, at the time, fiance. And they were going to stores and they were getting ignored.
Yep.
Well, I kind of talked down to.
Yep. I understand. There's a look you have to have.
Well, and I mean, we were going to, like, Kohl's and stuff, too, and, like, JCPenney's.
Even then.
Well...
the middle class is the new low class.
Well, and I told Tanner this, and he's like, Tanner's in the military, and he's an officer now, but, like, I was like, Tanner, you're wearing shorts, Crocs, and a pullover hoodie. You look like a bum dude.
Yeah.
Like, or you look like a high school kid.
You have to prove to them that you have a budget before you're going to be taken seriously. Otherwise, much like this couple did, you come in looking like you belong.
Yeah.
And so that's why when they say, our budget's $10, the gentleman goes, oh.
Yeah.
I see I see. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll get this piece of crap engraved for you.
Yeah, but it's a nice touch that it makes him feel very understanding, and
it really does make him human.
Yeah. On the other side, I absolutely hate the interior of this store. It is gaudy to me.
It's still gaudy, don't worry.
Yeah.
But, okay.
I think it's the green marble that I don't really like.
I will also give this. The shot that they chose for the overall of the insides, the aerial one from up high, is the worst angle to view this beautiful historic building from. Because this building does have a lot of really nice details. But they are small details in a grand space. And so the way they chose to angle it does show off how much jewelry is at Tiffany's. It does not show off the luxury of Tiffany's.
Okay.
If they had done a sweep from the inside doors going through, would have looked so much better.
Something that
I've seen this building. I've been there. It's beautiful.
Something that would have been probably harder for the time to do.
It would have been impossible.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But from Tiffany's, the pair then visit a public library where Fred, actually named Paul Varjak, signs his only book he's ever published. That's actually made it to a library, which is impressive.
That is impressive.
To be fair, the librarian does have the right to freak out because to her, Paul is just some unknown person defacing public property.
I understand, but also I have been a library rat enough to know that Paul is not the first nor the last to write a sweet message in a book.
No.
Calm down, madame. It's fine. He didn't scribble in the actual words of the book. Your sticker on the back is more damaging.
Yes, no, I agree. I've had to deal with that in video game covers.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, there's also a weird little phrase of cross my heart and kiss my elbow. Don't know what it means, but I like it.
It's an impossibility.
Oh. Yeah, okay. I'm an idiot.
It's okay. It's meant to, like, bring back that little bit of childness from her Mary Sue Childness, or whatever her fake-ass country name was.
Lulu May, thank you very much. Your pig name.
Yes, the name that you would give your potbelly.
To be fair, that is a cute name for a pig, for a potbelly pig.
It's meant to go back to, like, the whole, like, cross my heart, poke my eye out sort of nonsense that kids say. And it's a very, like, southern Midwest sort of idiom.
Okay, thank you for explaining, because I was giving you that look of, like, what the fuck are you talking about?
There's a lot that none makes sense of, and a lot of them are just made up off of someone's grandpa's cuff. Like, ain't nobody ever said that before. That's okay, doesn't matter, it counts.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm learning more. And so I do like that because it is also kind of they're devolving into their child, like
Yes.
almost schoolboy, schoolgirl level-esque, because
Very much so at this point.
they're off to a 5 and 10 to shoplift.
5 and dime. Get it right.
It's called 5 and 10 in the movie.
It shouldn't be. They're 5 and dimes.
It's 5 and dime, I'm aware. But in the movie, it's called a 5 and 10.
What is it, trademarked 5 and dime?
I don't know. We have a 5 and dime.
Yes, we do.
But it's a storefront for a museum.
Yes, it is, because it was originally a 5 and dime.
Yeah, but it's called a 5 and 10 in the movie.
All right, fine.
Which I do love the playful change in music as it goes to very spy-esque as they're
Yes.
like they're trying to steal something.
Like that's their whole goal, is to go in and like little kids steal something from the 5 and dime. Do not steal things from 5 and dimes.
No, please do not. But they do end up stealing a pair of paper masks and bark at a police officer as they run by.
Fun little side fact: one of the masks that they steal is Huckleberry Hound, who was a Hanna-Barbera character. One of the background characters voiced Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, doesn't she grab a cat mask?
She does. So that's cat and dog.
Hmm.
Cat and dog, and one of those dogs is Huckleberry Hound.
Okay. Cute.
It's cute.
Cute little nods.
It's cute. It's very romantic.
Because after this, she kind of puts back on the cat mask.
Yes, she does.
Metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
But because back at the apartment, there's more of soft focus and the pair kiss.
Finally.
In the morning, Frank wakes up alone. And
Surprise.
He wakes up alone to the masks being held by his statues. And he enters Holly's apartment, but she is gone.
Of course she fucking is.
And he rushes upstairs because as he's about to leave through her front door, oddly.
Yeah.
I get why they do it. It's so that way he can see the decorator walk by, and so he can rush upstairs. She arrives, but he confronts her. He's ending it, which she thinks that he's found his mark, that he's going to be a gold digger.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out his gold is in his heart.
How sweet and romantic.
Because he thinks he can help Golightly. He's the new Doc.
I love how both of them think they can fix each other. So cute.
And there's so much fucking use of darling in this scene.
Oh, the word darling is thrown so much that if you were to take a shot every time it happens in this movie, you would be hospitalized.
You'd be drunk quicker than you would watching the wobbly-eyed Lord of the Rings.
Ooh, that gives you kidney problems.
Yeah. Because right after this, she's like, all right, whatever, have your fling. Take this money and go. And
I mean, she's a good sport about it.
Yeah.
For like, losing her hot young man.
Yeah, for losing her...
Vienna sausage.
Yeah, for losing her Vienna sausage. Because right after this, Paul goes to pick up the engraved ring, but he still can't reach Golightly, which, I mean,
it's also, the time period where no one had a cell phone, so surprise.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not... of course you can't reach her.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a weird thing with this movie, too, because we hinted at it a little bit earlier, because besides Tiffany's, there's not really... That's why there isn't it. It's because they go to Tiffany's, and they want Tiffany's to be the attraction.
Yes.
I was just thinking, because there's a lot of these old... And it's not just this one, though. There's a lot of, like, movies set in New York where no big attractions.
Nope, not one.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That's why Tiffany's is the only one. I'm not going to go on that rant that I originally had. I'd done a little bit of research and just kind of digging into like, hey, what was going on there at the time stuff. It doesn't matter.
It is interesting if you want to look it up, but it doesn't have anything to do with the movie.
Yeah, because most of the attractions we think of were built in the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, it's the 60s. They should be attractions now. It's because they want Tiffany's to be the focal point instead of being like, well, there's the Empire State Building, there's the Chrysler Building. And
by doing so, it moves away from being a touristy New York City movie and more of like, they are New York citizens.
Yeah, exactly. That makes much more sense. But he finds her in the library where she is studying up on South America. She has, she's returned to her life on the hustle, and she has found her real target.
She found some real money, huh?
She's going to marry the Brazilian, who is barely mentioned in the party scene.
He is there briefly.
Because she's had her little fling, she's on to the next one.
Yep.
She's still on the run, which, at this point, Paul confesses his love to her, and sets her straight as what his intentions are, and who he is. He's not Fred.
Yes.
Which is the biggest thing, because up until the kiss, their playfulness is almost like brother and sister a little bit.
It's definitely not serious.
No. But at the same time, she is setting him straight of like, hey,
I'm a gold digger.
Yeah.
I am not someone who's no broke to broke.
Well,
You've only published one book to book.
she's also not settling down.
No.
Which, again, good writing because it ties into the fact that he's still been paid for writing, most likely my friend.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, here's my $50 to go to the powder room, assuming that he's paying, and this is also assuming that he's paying for past due services.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. They probably screwed after
Oh,
that kiss.
100%. Both of them are naked an uncomfortable amount of time for not seeing any tits in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it is the 60s. We're still kind of coming out of the code era. And
enough that it was definitely at the time like a, oh.
Yeah.
Oh. It wasn't like a, oh my gosh, how dare they? But it was definitely like a, they got away with having a naked man in bed.
Oh, no.
She is in bed with him?
There was side boob?
She is wearing nothing but a robe?
Oh, yeah, because
there's a lot of time in just her robe.
Yeah, because there's that one part where, like, she has a makeshift robe, which it's assumed she was in the tub before.
Exactly.
And then after this, we cut to Mr. Yunioshi, who is soaking in his tub as he is buzzed by Holly to come back up as she's bringing the future president of Brazil home.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Do what you gotta do.
Which, right after this, after they enter the apartment, Holly begins throwing a fit, and we learn that real Fred has been killed in an accident. He's dead.
He's dead at war. Surprise.
Yeah. And I think it's a twofold thing, because we realize that we've also learned that she's doing this for Fred. It's from the get-go. That's why she's trying to marry Rich.
Exactly.
But the tantrum is twofold. One, she's lost the closest person she's ever loved, or she loved
her
as a brother.
Her only family member.
Her only family. But also because marrying the rich bloke while it's ensured their well-being, she threw away Paul, and now it's almost...
It's for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's for nothing. So it's a twofold frustration. And it's also revealing that the Brazilian dude is not close to her at all at this point. But Paul also knows his place, even though he's like, oh, Fred, her brother, he was close. The Brazilian dude was never told about Fred.
Exactly.
Where it's really showing that she was in love with him.
Yes.
And he was the only one that she was telling her life to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which, sometime later we cut to Paul has returned after obviously having moved out to visit Holly, who has furniture now. But
good for her. She's upgraded.
Which, showing she obviously cares, but she's also kind of settling down because her apartment's more organized.
She's at least matured enough to realize that a girl needs furniture more than a suitcase.
She's making a salad.
She's eating.
Yeah. Which Holly keeps trying to convince Paul how happy she is. It's revealed that he's only there so she can say goodbye, really. Which, in my opinion, she really called him because she needs comfort for the marriage to the Brazilian dude. And she's just now kind of going through the motions. She's already set stuff in gear, and now she can't backpedal. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of leading more to the life she wants. Maybe this guy will buy her Tiffany's now.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, if he owns Brazil, I don't see why not.
And, I mean, they're back from this. They go back out on a stroll because even in this moment, Paul's like, why am I really even here, Holly?
Yeah. They're both smart characters.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, she's even mentioned that she's been keeping up with him. She's like, I've been reading your columns. I've been reading your stories.
I mean, that's sweet.
Yeah. So, she still cares. And they go back out for a stroll, and Paul even confronts her again of like, hey, you're kind of settling. Like,
you sure about this?
Exactly.
And by settling, I mean you've picked a very wealthy man to settle for.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Which, back home, they are arrested by the narcotics squad, which is the last scene with the neighbor.
I love this scene, because up until this point, you have forgotten about that mob boss, haven't you?
Just a bit.
Yeah, you forgot that Holly was purposely playing dumb so that she wouldn't get arrested.
Yep. And at the same time, like, this is the kind of spotlight Holly enjoys because she's being very oblivious.
Yes.
But being like, oh, but he's such a nice man. And it's like, well, who's going to be your lawyer? it's going to be this guy.
Yeah.
And then the guy comes in, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very kind of classic chaotic police arrest.
It is. And it's one of the, like, we haven't had a good comedic scene in so long that this one hits nice and hard.
Oh, yeah. It's the nice little bit of comic relief we have.
Yes.
Because right after this, we cut to Paul at a bar calling the Hollywood producer, who falls asleep with a script on his chest, and he was calling him because the guy was posting the bail for Holly to get out.
Exactly.
Which Shepard does mention quite a bit, that this guy very much is the classic Hollywood producer of like, well, yeah. He's fallen asleep with the script on his chest, but also that speakerphone was real.
Ooh.
That was the peak of technology at the time.
Fancy.
So you know he's a high-end producer.
He's making money.
But I also like him because he really is, even though he makes fake movies and stuff, he is more in touch with Holly. He's more he knows what's going on with Holly, because in a way he also kind of plays the game himself, where he's like, she was crazy and a phony, but a real phony.
Yeah.
We're like
he knew he saw through her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But he still liked her.
Yeah, exactly. Because she, even though she was playing it up, she was doing it in a way that was very much herself still.
Exactly.
And so I'm sure that's why he posted the bail, is because he felt a kin.
Yeah.
And just camaraderie. And that's the whole thing about all her relationships and the people who are actually connected and help her, is the camaraderie.
Exactly.
Because in the morning, there's a plan to get Holly back to a hotel, keep her under wraps. But her plan is to get away, because she's still hopeful and naive, but she's been dumped.
She has, because it'd look bad for the Brazilian guy if his future bride was arrested for mob stuff.
Exactly.
Because he's probably also got mob stuff happening.
Again, she's saying they're all rats, and at the same time, the people who care for her are still around.
They stick them with her.
Yep, the producer helped her, Paul helped her, and Kat is still there.
Good old Kat.
Yep.
All 9 of them.
Yep, because, and also at the same time, there's that heavy emphasis on, like, they're all rats, they're all super rats. I'm just going to go and I'm going to start my own life again, because she herself at this point is the rat.
Yeah,
she's
disgusted
trapped
with herself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because in this moment, she tosses out Kat.
Poor Kat. But also, like, again, if you want to, deep metaphor into how Kat and her are the same person.
Because she doesn't know who she is. She specifically says at this point she doesn't know who she is. Because, like I said, she is still Lulu May at heart.
She almost became Lulu May again.
She's about to become Lulu May again.
Exactly. And she doesn't want that.
But she is going to.
But she wants Kat to be free, which is why she never names Kat.
Yeah, but she's settling with the one she actually wants to this time around.
Which is different than settling for the one that can pay for your brother's bills.
Yeah, because...
eats a lot of peanut butter, apparently.
Yeah, because Paul leaves to... Well, I mean... Yeah, actually, I don't know. My cats don't eat peanut. I've never tried. I don't have enough peanut butter.
No, her brother eats peanut butter, not the cat.
I know, but I don't know.
My husband eats a lot of peanut butter. I'll tell you, it is an expensive hobby.
It's a disgusting amount of peanut butter.
It is a gross amount of peanut butter. We have 4 peanut butter jars at home, and he only eats one of them, because that one's fancy.
He is a peanut butter connoisseur.
He is!
You posh bastard.
I spoil him with fancy peanut butter.
And so I do like this part too, because it's a great use of the little action we have in the movie, because as Paul leaves to find the cat, now Holly is trapped by herself. She's the only one in the car.
And now she has to find herself.
Her only safety net of Paul has completely left. And so Holly leaves to find the cat, as Paul can't find her. And for a second, it started to rain, by the way, as well.
Because it's a romance movie.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
She's lost her only companions and someone she cared for, which there's that little brief moment as Kat appears.
Oh, this cat looks sad.
Honestly, this
cat looks very sad.
This is some of the best cat acting I have seen in a movie.
So good.
Because right after they kick the cat out of the cab, and he's just sitting there with his little paws around the fence. He's got his little face through it. It's so cute. And he looks
wet and miserable.
Oh yeah, you know someone is just below camera holding that cat. Yes. Yeah. But the two kiss as Moon River plays, and the end appears.
So sweet. Would you like to know the difference between the ending and the book's ending?
Yes, please.
In the book's ending, and this is why I say she almost, and I don't agree with you. In the book's ending, she goes to Brazil. And Dingaling boyfriend finds Kat, and then is forced to keep Kat and wonder how she is as she occasionally writes to him.
Well, this is not the book, and we are reviewing the movie.
Fair, okay.
So, in the movie version, she is still Lulu May.
Yes.
Not in the book.
Well, in the book, she 100% re-becomes Lulu May, because she again accepts
Goes
the
on
help.
the run. Yeah.
She again accepts the help from a man who is just preying on her for her looks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. But while Capote may not have liked the movie,
No,
not. It was a critical and financial success.
Not just a little bit, a lot of bit.
Yeah. As Capote's biographer in Capote Never Liked Hepburn, an iconic role by Today.com, mentioned that Capote deemed the film to be a valentine to free-spirited women rather than a cautionary tale about a lost girl in the big city. The movie is a confection, a sugar and spice confection.
Which, I agree with the last sentence, 100%. But I also think that it was interesting to hear the complaints that happened when the movie was changed from a cautionary tale like the book was into a, hey, being a free spirit is not a bad thing.
No.
Because most people loved that. And then we did get a handful of people who were like, no, the city is dangerous.
Yeah.
She should have gone to Brazil.
Yeah, well, and it's at a time, and especially when it's set, like,
Yes,
New York
100%.
was a very dangerous place.
But I appreciate that while all of the activities she did were theoretically dangerous, we were bringing random people home, none of what she did other than the mob boss shit, which that's her own fault, she knew, was ever portrayed in the movie as actually dangerous.
No, exactly.
Like, it was just who she was, is what she was doing.
It's kind of the same thing that happened with, like, Pretty Woman, where a lot of women went out to go work the streets, and then it's like, oh, wait, this is actually really dangerous.
I would also argue that there's, like, every couple, like, every generation has a movie that redefines something about what the old generation thought was inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so, like, for some people, that movie was, like, Sex and the City. Like, what do you mean you're this old and you haven't gotten married, haven't settled down, you're career focused, and you cuss like a sailor and drink so much champagne?
I very much so. My parents disapprove of a lot of stuff I watch.
Yeah. And, like, I think every generation has a movie that doesn't break the mold on purpose. It's just like, hey, by the way, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're like, this is the new. This is the normal. And this was on a line for that.
I don't know why my mind just went to Atlas Shrugged. This the new. This true.
It is fact.
Yeah. And yeah, to a point you got that. Because, I mean, even at this point, Hepburn thought she was miscast. And
later on, she came back and reminisced on how much she liked playing the role.
Oh, yeah. I know. She absolutely loved it, but I understand she probably...
She was putting herself out there.
Yeah.
A lot of people turned this down for good reason.
Yeah, and the role really wasn't written for her figure.
It wasn't written for her at all.
No, exactly. And also of note, Capote wanted to play Paul himself.
Of course he fucking did.
Yeah.
Of course he fucking did.
Well, and so to really talk about, like, the influence of Breakfast at Tiffany's,
I mean, we will touch it, but it could go on forever.
Yeah, well, and I think it is important to really dive into it a little bit, at least.
Agreed.
Because it kickstarted, the career of Audrey Hepburn herself.
This was like the holy shit, everyone knows who this woman is.
But it also changed fashion.
It really did.
Yeah. As we mentioned, the poster is one of the most iconic things. Her oversized cigarette holder, black dress, is one of the most iconic of American pop culture. Even her wide brim hat, while she's visiting Sally Tomato.
Yep.
Redone in The Dark Knight.
And it honestly, the wide brim hat comes up regularly as a classy symbol. Even though this movie overplayed the oversized hat to make her seem fancier, because she was trying to be too fancy.
Yeah.
Because of this movie, that size of hat, the little black dress, and the stupid long stiletto cigarette, all, and the giant sunglasses, which beforehand were kind of seen as a little bit gaudy.
Yeah.
now suddenly are all classy symbols.
Yeah, because from what I was seeing, a lot of people mistake them for Ray-Ban, but they were
much more expensive than that.
they're some Italian or French company, and the specific model is called the Manhattan.
Yes, they are.
But even the producer Shepard mentions that even for the time, she was kind of an anomaly because she became iconic despite, as he mentioned, her big feet. And for lack of a better term, the traditional va-va-voom.
Yes. In other words, she had small tits.
No ass either.
She was very flat.
Yeah.
But what she did have was attitude.
Yes. And we talked about this a little bit while I was rewatching it through text, that part of her charm that really set her apart from Monroe was, while both of them are talented in their own right, they both embody like different, and Monroe is the classic bombshell for the most part.
She is the model of the bombshell. Exactly,
the model, but it's their personalities.
Very much so.
Or just the
yin and yang.
Yeah, because here the reason Hepburn, in my opinion, really was that it was partly her pairing with Tiffany's itself.
Yes.
Where Tiffany's was already a symbol of elegance.
Yes.
The sheerness of her was really it didn't feel cartoonish almost.
No, and the other thing that really helped her stand out was, and this is gonna sound odd, but I promise it will all loop back around and make sense. So Audrey Hepburn's entire style predating this movie all focused around her either having very short hair for the time period, or in this movie, it is always up.
Yeah.
And not just up in like a ponytail, it is updo up.
Yeah.
Which gave a difference to Monroe, who usually had shoulder length poofed up. It was all done, it was all styled, but it was fun, it was flirty. This felt put together, this felt like effort had to be done, whereas Monroe felt effortless.
Well, and I think there's also something with it too where, there is something to that. But also just in body figure wise, we've had that back and forth, especially in recent years, of what an actual person looks like. And Hepburn really at the same time felt like an attainable look.
But without actually being attainable.
Yeah.
Yes. I 100% agree, because both her and Monroe had desirable figures, but in two different ways, and both of them had them to an extent that most people couldn't attain.
Yeah.
Monroe's hourglass figure was, for most people, completely unattainable, and Audrey Hepburn's ability
to be as skinny as she was.
Well, and the clothing style that she chose to wear is all reminiscent of 1920s fashion, which we already assume and remember as classy and like kind of fancy. It's a lot of flapper stuff. That clothing style only looks good on people with no tits, no ass. You gotta be a cardboard cutout. And, to be honest, a little bit broader shoulders makes that style look good. And that's what she wore for most of this film. She doesn't wear what Monroe does, which is the A-line pinup style.
Yeah.
Because that's trying to accentuate hips, that's trying to accentuate breasts. She's really going for more of that 1920s classic look. And because of that, neither one of those women are attainable, but you feel like you might.
Yeah.
And you pick whichever one you think you, would... because they have two very distinct personalities, most people would go, oh, I love this person's personality. I'm now leaning into them aesthetically. They had, a whole package.
Yeah.
Which at the time wasn't really a thing. You liked a person because they were in a movie or in a music. You might like how they look. You might like how they sound. But most of them didn't have, the whole aesthetic to go with them.
Yeah. Well, and... comparatively, because we've done movies with both of them where they are gold diggers.
Exactly.
In different regards. Monroe in Some Like It Hot. But if we look at their personalities, and I think that's more so what defines between people who are very into Monroe or very into Hepburn, is that Monroe, in most of the movies I've seen her in, she's very ditzy and not very... They're both carefree, but Monroe is quite a bit more ditzier.
Yes, and...
Betty Boop-esque.
She is very Betty Boop-esque, and also Monroe feels like she is purposefully this carefree spirit, whereas a lot of Audrey Hepburn's, and this movie's a good example of it, is she is forcing herself to be that carefree spirit, but that's what she wants.
Yeah.
Like, they're coming from two different places trying to achieve similar goals, and that's, I think, why both of them, despite being actresses and starlets at the same time period, both still hold the same wave and length that they have.
Yeah.
Because while they are essentially boiled down very similar, because of their differences, they set themselves apart so nicely.
Exactly. Also, side little bit of note, because I went into a little bit of a rabbit hole of sex symbols in Hollywood.
My favorite.
A couple of the first ones ever mentioned was a Japanese actor, Hayakawa Kintaro, who did a lot of matinee shows and stuff.
Okay.
As well as the German actress, Asta Nielsen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Interesting, because we think of like classic sex symbols as being Monroe and Hepburn.
And I think they reclaimed a lot of that, or even reinforced it for a lot of people, because they definitely weren't writing the originals for any of this.
Yeah.
They were polishing something that was already there.
Yeah, but also at the same time, this movie sits on this weird like shifting ideals along with like the sexual revolution, and instead of having a nice body, there was the emancipation, like instead of just having the nice body, there was this emancipation and changing of sexuality, that you could be free and not follow the same stuffy American
stereotype.
Yeah, stereotype. I'm trying to think of the specific word, but it's blanking on me.
Yeah, I also think that this movie does a really nice job, and part of the reason why it's remained a classic despite its two very big aggressive flaws, because
prudishness.
That's it. This movie plays with themes so directly, but without being forceful about it.
Yeah.
In such a way that, like, no matter how old this movie gets, at no point are you like, oh my gosh, so dated. Technology in it, maybe.
Yeah.
But, like, the actual themes of the movie never feel like you're going to have to look back and be like, oh, well, we give her a pass because she was in the 50s. In the 50s, this is what you wanted.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, I mean, it's one of those movies that probably hits differently than when you watch it. Because
I also think it hits differently when in your life you watch it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll go into that in a little bit, just because that's kind of towards the end of my thoughts on this.
Sure.
But just a couple things I want to mention, because there's a big rabbit hole about going down, like this movie being at the forefront of all these movements and whatnot.
Oh, sure.
Also, interestingly enough, this movie was shot 3 months after Hepburn had her first child, Sean Hepburn Farrer.
I mean, girl's doing good.
Yeah.
For being a new mom.
Also of note, Hepburn's salary was $750,000, which made her the highest paid actress at the time.
Girl!
Yeah. It also rejuvenated the career of Buddy Ebsen, who played Doc.
Of course.
But most of us know him playing another iconic American television role.
Yes.
Jed Clampett.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Which, this is what led to that role, and honestly, he is a fantastic Jed Clampett.
He really is.
Yeah. And we can't finish off talking about this movie without talking about the music, which...
So good.
I am not musically inclined to a lot of stuff, but it was composed by Henry Nicola Mancini, who is, I guess, considered one of the greatest film composers of all time.
Yes, he is.
I apologize. I'm sure someone's like, of course he is. Of course he is. And I'm like, I have no clue. I am an idiot.
The amount of impact that he had on this film, Hepburn, of course, working on it, had seen it, I think, at least a few times without any music, because in this... The way the filming for this movie worked was they added the music last. And a lot of it wasn't done until the end anyway. And so when she finally got to see it with the music, she wrote him a note by hand thanking him for the music and like how much soul she thought it brought to the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Besides Moon River, because him and John Mercer both relatively received Oscars for Best Original Song and Best Original Score for this movie.
Yes.
Which all the other stuff they came up against, I have never heard of before.
I mean, yeah.
Except for, I think West Side Story was one of them.
West Side Story has some good music.
Yeah, which I think West Side Story won Best Picture or something that year. I don't care much for awards, so...
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that these little things, like, really add to the level of movie.
Definitely.
But for me, I guess at the end of it, Breakfast at Tiffany's really is a movie about lost dreamers, but they're stuck in how the world is.
Yes.
And that's why I say, like, when you watch it for the first time, like, it will hit differently. So, like, if you watch it in your mid to late 20s when, like, you're kind of established, will hit differently if you watch it as, like, a teenager. Which...
definitely. And then if you watch it again after you've already had a family and you've like, settled into how you're living, this movie's going to hit even differently. Yeah.
And there's some other things too. So there is an alternate ending I do want to talk about briefly.
Yes, there is.
I think was better. And what happened is that it's mentioned in Fifth Avenue, 5 a.m., Audrey Hepburn, Breakfast at Tiffany's and the Dawn of the Modern Woman by Sammy Watson, which I have not read actually. This was a quote that was pulled from, I think, Wikipedia, but I liked it. In the other ending, Holly and George, or this is describing the ending. In the other ending, Holly and George are in the alley. They recover they recover the cat, and then just walk down the street, and it fades out. There's no romantic crescendo or embrace. It's bittersweet.
I like that. That's cute.
I like that ending honestly quite a bit better. But that being said, it's not the movie, so we can't really talk about it. I just thought it was interesting.
No, and they purposely went with this ending because they already had an ending, and they went, it's too sad.
Yeah.
We need a happy ending to the romance
I mean, we're still in that time where the sad endings aren't the preferred endings. Everyone wants the couple to come together at the very end. But at the same time, they do it in a very good way where it's not...
It's not an easy end.
No, it's not an easy end. And even like that emotional kiss is just... It feels like it's one out of desperation a little bit, too, where...
It doesn't feel as conclusive as a lot of modern rom-coms, where it's like, wait, we're not going to talk about all of the trouble you guys just had? No, this one feels like, no, we're aware. We're aware of the problem.
Yeah, and even my sensibility for writing and how I think it would have ended, I personally would have liked the ending, but I would have added a little bit something else to it, where like she just kind of leans into him a little bit. Something a little bittersweet, where it's not conclusive of like or like because nowadays even if you had that ending it would pop up at the end, they got married 6 months later or some stupid shit like that. But
I'm a homewrecker and Kat would have run away.
But I do think that really the movie is just a movie about lost people, and it's sitting at a time where honestly our country was kind of lost.
There was a lot of people who felt like they could connect to those characters.
No, exactly. And I don't know, it's one of those weird classic movies where it's good despite its big issues that don't fit well with today's standards. But like I was talking with my buddy Sugi and Laugh on Sugi's stream actually, and I had brought this up that we were covering this movie, and they're like, oh yeah, that movie's got the issues. And I remember reading something along the lines of, I think it was in a biography of Bruce Lee, or is mentioned in one of the articles that when he saw the movie, he was uncomfortable with the portrayal.
Yeah, I think I read an interview where I think whoever he was with, I think maybe it was his wife. Yeah,
I think it was his future wife. He was like, hey, do you want to leave?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that. And at the same time, Bruce Lee did change those stereotypes. And that is...
He worked very hard to,
Yeah, and that's an influence of the movie. But at the same time... When Bruce, and I was talking with some people, like I mentioned, and I talked to other people about it too, in his way, Bruce Lee also facilitated another stereotype too of...
The Kung Fu,
along with the influx of Kung Fu movies, which we grew up with and stuff, that a lot of Asians were very mythical and martial arts.
And I mean, we still have that problem.
Yeah.
And it's reached a point where we are now aware, I think most people are aware that like, just about everything that comes on the screen is 9 times out of 10 characterized to a point where like, was this really the best we could do? But I would like to hope that this was a stepping ground for everyone, because all of the people involved in this were incredibly talented. And so like, I would love to think that this was a learning opportunity, even if it was a huge public failure. in those stepping moments.
Yeah.
I mean, it did well. There are huge successes about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Going forward, we learned a lot.
No, exactly. And, I mean, I guess at the end, even with all the flaws, that is a whole big rabbit hole to go through.
It really is.
Chris, do you recommend watching Breakfast at Tiffany's now a long-ass time later? 80 plus years later.
80 plus years later. Yes and no.
Okay.
There is a group of people who I think are going to be able to see Breakfast at Tiffany's and enjoy it the way that it was meant to be enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how poetry's not for everybody, but everyone could appreciate poetry.
Yeah.
I think this movie is the same.
Okay.
So, while this movie is a classic, and I do think that if any of what we've talked about is even remotely interesting to you, you should see this. I would not force anyone who is not already interested in this sort of movie to see it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean,
I think for my romantic-ass husband, whose favorite movie is 50 First Dates, and hasn't seen this movie yet... By the way, I haven't given it back to you because he hasn't seen this movie yet. This is his kind of movie because he's a romantic at soul.
Yeah.
If you are a romantic at heart, or if you are a soft, squishy person, this movie is a must-watch. If you are a hard-ass who has a 13-year-old boy's humor, this movie is just okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I am in different camps on it. One, I do recommend watching this. I mean, it's a classic for a reason. I mean, yeah, it's got its problems, but all movies, the further and further back you go, have their issues.
Yeah.
That being stated, I do think it is important to watch, especially for film watchers and lovers in general, because it is such an iconic movie.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's... Again, I think it depends on when you're introduced to it.
I do too.
Because I loved it for Hepburn. Because...
Yeah. I think most people, when introduced to this, love it for Hepburn. And then once you hit your 30s, you love it for the idea of what she wants.
Yeah.
And then once you hit your 60s, you love it for the idea of who you used to be.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a good summary of it, because it's very much the idea of just being free and just, even though life sucks. It has that little bit of carefreeness, even though it skirts around the serious issues and having to deal with everything. It's
Yes.
easy to want to be at Tiffany's.
It is very easy to want to be at Tiffany's.
Yeah. It's a movie that's all about escapism. In a medium that is about escapism.
Yes, all while being terribly grounded.
Yeah. So, yeah, I recommend going to see Breakfast at Tiffany's. So
I would say most people are romantics and would love Breakfast at Tiffany's as well.
Yeah, but I get it. Old movies aren't for everyone.
No, and again, if again, we've talked about it before. The scene is never ending. I understand not wanting to watch this movie because of that.
Exactly. I get it too. So
yeah.
Anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace!